All right, Steve, we are live. Welcome to our weekly live show where we bring you success stories, insights, perspectives, and wisdom learned from mistakes to help you accelerate your growth. This week we feature Steve's Sapato. Steve, how are you doing
Hey,
this morning?
I'm doing great. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. This is great.
Awesome, awesome. Everyone, Steve is the expert in creating confident conversations that create relationships and opportunities. So anything in that realm, it's open to conversation today. Steve, how are you doing today? Where are you dialing in from?
Well, I'm down here in Sebring, Florida, United States. I live in an RV right now. We moved in about 4 months ago. We were going to taste the RV life and really travel, and then we said nope. We found a really great location and lots of people who want to do lots of things, and that's what it's about: relationships. When you can find people who make you feel good and you can help them feel good, you find the good friends, you find the good relationships, and people who have things in common with you. That's why we're staying kind of put right down here in Sebring, Florida.
So you found your partner, your life partner, who
Oh
loves the
yeah.
lifestyle that you're doing. So you're like, you know what, honey? Let's get into an RV. Let's get rid of everything that we have, and let's live a minimalistic lifestyle, and then just travel the country, huh?
Yep, that's right. That's what it's all about. And finding that perfect partner is something that you can spend your life doing if you don't know the secrets to finding the right partner.
That's right. That's right. And I read your book, so thank you for sharing that book that you shared last. What was it, like 3 months ago? Oh
Yeah, I
boy,
think it was about 3 months
that
ago.
was a
Yeah.
game changer. That was a game changer. I,
Oh,
I highly
cool.
recommend anybody. I'm gonna put the link down below on this live show so that people can download and read it
Thank you.
if you have if you're willing to share with them. Now,
Absolutely.
everyone loves a success story. It's especially ones that's packed with tons of wisdoms and that can they can benefit from whether in their personal life or in their professional life, right? Now let's take a walk down the memory lane a little bit here, Steve, and tell us what were you doing or before making a switch prior to entrepreneurship. What were you doing prior to this?
I've been around a long time, and I've tried several different careers. I mean,
Uh,
I started off when I graduated college. I worked for IBM for a few years, and I managed a sporting goods store. Then I owned a sporting goods store. Then I'm sure I worked for a couple other places. Managed a gas station, for goodness sakes. Um, Opened my own ice cream store, opened my own nightclub, started my own real estate appraisal business after working for somebody else for a few years, and
mhm,
kept that business for 20 years. That's what gave me a background so that I could go out and travel and speak. See, I've been speaking for 40 years and got to help other companies, organizations grow and become more. And all the time had a wonderful foundation for financial security. So that's something that sometimes we lack is the
mhm.
foundation, not just financial, but the foundation in our personal lives too. Because
Right.
without the support of somebody else, it's tough to make a successful go of things.
Right. So when you were traveling and speaking across the country, what kind of topics do you usually talk about? And
I was hired. I'm a corporate speaker, which means I'm brought in to teach companies how to run better meetings, how to be better managers, how to engage their employees better, how to keep the employees, right? So
Mhm.
lower that or keep improve employee retention, all those kind of things that lead to more success in a business or a company, which a lot of times they struggle with. Struggle with
Oh yeah.
especially management skills.
Hmm. And you touches on relationships as well, right? Because it all intertwine with personal and also professional development. So do they ask you to talk about relationships at work or at home while you were traveling?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things, especially for managers, is they call it balance, right? I call it harmony. I don't know that you can find a balance because you're always doing this, but the harmony is what happens inside your head when you say, "Hey, I need to make this all work." And whether you're working 100 hours a week or whether you're working 40 hours a week, your partner has to have bought into that. You have to have selected the right partner who's going to help you grow and become, or you might want to have to help them grow and become. I say that because right now, my wife is phenomenal. She's in the upper middle management at a healthcare company, and it's my responsibility to help her be more successful by supporting her in ways that
Hmm.
will help her have the freedom to grow in her company.
Hmm. So talk to me. Your book was really fascinating when it comes to finding the right person or the right mate or the right partner. Now, what were the catalysts that made you write that book? What was going on inside your head that was like, you know what, I gotta write this book because this is what people need in order to have a part of their life is settled, so they can focus on a different part of their life. So what was that? Share with us.
Well, I spent 21 years in an absolutely miserable relationship. And that I mean screaming and hollering. And she wasn't the only one screaming and hollering. She brought me into screaming and hollering. So I spent 21 years. I say 21, but first 3 years we seemed like we were doing well, and then a couple things snapped, and we became this other couple. But what I realized in helping a couple other people, we belonged to a church and organization then, and
Mhm.
people would come over and say, Steve, I need help. I need help with my relationship. I've been dating this guy on and off. I've been dating this woman on and off. And what I learned was most of us don't really know what we're looking for. So, and a perfect example is red flags. If you are not open to red flags, the things that should set off and say, "Oh, wait a minute, let's hold back here." I make one example in my book, which is this lady dated a guy for 2 years. And then they decided to get married. And when they got married, they were married less than a month before she filed for divorce. And when I was like interviewing, I interviewed 2,400 people for this little 99-page book, just so you know.
Mm.
And that's a huge number of people. But I was real interested in what creates success in a relationship. And what she said was there was one red flag. I said, what was that? She said, when my father-in-law to be said, if he ever hurts you, please let me know. And I said, wow, what did he mean by that? And she said, I was in love. I thought it was just a passing comment. I never asked him. And
Mhm.
the father-in-law knew that the husband to be was an abuser. He never brought it up. He never said it in those terms, but he knew it. And so he tried to warn her a little bit by saying, hey, if he hurts you, let me know. And she didn't follow it up. Red flags that change the world in terms of can you select the right person? So when I wrote this book, it was designed. I mean, I had so many opportunities, people coming to me first and saying, I don't know what to do. And I would say, well, let's figure it out. I knew I had chosen incorrectly, and that's why I was fighting and arguing and screaming for 17
Mhm.
years before I finally pulled a chute and got out and said, "Hey, I'm happy as a clam now that I'm not screaming and hollering with somebody every day." So it was my own personal uh, challenges that said there
Right.
has to be a way, there has to be something. And when I started to look into it, it was we think we fall in love sexually, right? Physically. Oh, this is the person I gotta have this person, but they weren't our best friends. And when you'd have arguments, everything would fester and everything would hurt. Everything would stay with you. And then they'd bring it up later and throw it against you and try and hurt you with it. And what we found was, guess what? If we find that right person initially, I call it best friends on fire. When you can find your best friend and that fires into a relationship of love and passion and romance,
Mhm.
the rest of the world starts to come together much better. Yeah.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and I wholeheartedly believe in that because I've myself got gone to a few relationships, right? So I can totally get that. I mean, what you're gonna initially have to be physically attracted to someone,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then
That physical. Yeah.
the physical aspects have to be there,
That's
obviously. And
right.
then the second thing that'll keep the relationship going is can you connect with them spiritually, mentally, right? Aligning
All that,
interests, all
all
of
that
it.
good
The
stuff.
more
Yep.
connection you have below their physical attraction level, the longer, the stronger the relationships.
That's right. That's exactly right. And then you also have to have common goals, common places you went. One of the people I interviewed in the book, they dated each other for 2 years, and then they were married about 2 years when they decided to get divorced. And I said, and they said they were best friends. I said, how does that happen? And she said, well, we talked about what we were doing. We talked about being in love. We talked about the fun we were having and everything they enjoyed, but they didn't talk about the future. And one day they went to visit his folks, and on their trip, when they're sitting in, I'll say Montana, I forget where it was. They're sitting in a nice cabin out in 20 acres someplace, and his mother says to the husband, her husband, "Well, hey, when are you going to be building your cabin out here?" And he said, "Mom, I'm probably 5 or 10 years away from that." And his wife kind of went, "Wait, what? What?" And so on the way back, like it was like a 3-hour drive or something back to where they were going. And on the way back, they started to talk about that because she said, you've never talked about having a cabin in Montana. And he's like, oh, I just thought you knew. Well, it turns out she was a fashion person and she wanted to be in the city. and he was a country guy, wanted to live out in the country. So even though they were best friends and even though they got along great, they decided they were going in wrong directions. It wasn't where they wanted their future to be, and they agreed to split up right there on that one journey. And you know what? Both of them have found new partners, are happy as heck, and that's what counts. Is when you
Wow.
realize you're going in different directions. And boy, if you don't talk about all that stuff in the beginning, right? Not
Mhm.
just, are you an abuser? And people say, well, Steve, how do you ask somebody if they're an abuser? How do you ask them? I go, it's conversations you have to have. You don't have to ask them directly, hey, did you hit your last wife? But you do have to ask questions that might get around to that. And we can teach you all that kind of, when we talk about having confident conversations, that's a thing I'm putting together here for September of this year, which is all about how to have conversations that lift other people up, that create relationships, that
Right.
create opportunities in both business and your personal life. We have to learn how to have conversations, and most people don't know how to do that.
So conversation leads to clues and help you uncover red flags
Oh yeah,
in the
absolutely.
relationships, especially during the beginning stages, right? Because
Heck,
like
all yeah. Go ahead.
right, because I mean at the very beginning everything is rainbow and sunshine, and
Yeah, that's right. It's all rainbow and sunshine, and we do. We look past. I mean, I was in my second marriage. I looked right past the fact that she screamed and hollered at me a couple different times, and I was like, "It's okay." She lost her temper. Well, until that became a daily event, it was okay. But I looked right past it. I went, "Oh, I'm physically attracted to this woman. She's phenomenally sexy, and I this is going to be great." And then when they're screaming at you, hey, sexuality goes out the window, and everything else is foregone. So yeah, it is one of those deals where you have to ask in the beginning, but you have to pay attention to what you want. So that's what my book was written for, the 20 things you need to
Mhm.
learn in order to find the love of your life. And if you don't know how to find that love, we all think again, it's physical. Once I find that person physically, that's going to be the right person for me. That's only
Mhm.
50% of the relationship. And if you
Mhm.
sometimes it's not even that, especially when you get older. You get to be 70, 75 years old. The physical part is, this big.
That's
And
right.
so
That's
you
right.
have to understand that if you're not good friends, the rest, it doesn't matter. You've seen people where one of them is in great physical shape and one of them is just a tub. And yet they've been together for 45 years. And
Mhm.
on the surface, you could say, well, how are you attracted to that? But the answer is they're friends more than anything else. And that's what you have to find, that friend. When you have an argument with a friend, do you hold it on to grudge forever? No, you have an argument with a friend and you get over it and you move on. But when you have an argument with your spouse and you're not friends, all you do is go separate ways, and they'll use it against you to start
Mhm.
another argument down the road.
Now, let me ask you this question. I know that I've seen this around my circle and also other people's circles. Is that a lot of divorces and separations ends up, and what I've noticed, maybe I'm wrong here, but they tend to have an oops first, right? And then they ended up like they don't date very long. They have an oops, and they ended up getting married, and then 5, 7, 10 years later, they tend to go separate ways, or they're in a miserable marriage. So what advice do you say to those people who had an oops, and or do you, first of all, do you see that in your world, right?
Are you talking when you say oops? Are you talking about a child?
Yes.
Okay, make sure we're
That
talking the same
is
thing.
bad. I mean, it's not
You
bad
know
at all.
but that is one of the things. I mean, that's right now. There's that big Roe versus Wade stuff where hey, you could go out and have a whatever you're. But you know what? If you're not that person, if you have an oops, do you have to get married? The answer is no, absolutely
Mhm.
not. You would rather raise a child separately that will. You'll have happy households that you can bring them into. So you want to establish rules and regulations for how you're going to handle that child. My first marriage, we had a child late in that marriage. I was married 9 years in, and 7 years in is when we got pregnant and and got to have a child. But she used that as a lever against me for the next 10 years. I hardly ever got to see my child without arguing and fighting for custody, that weekend. So you have to find that time early on where you're not going to hate each other and you're not going to try and use a child as leverage. But yes, when you have an oops, if you're in love, again, in love with friendship on fire, then go ahead and get married. And there's always challenges. You're not going to find a relationship without huge challenges. big challenges that might take you right to the edge of divorce. And then you have to back up and start asking. I have people still, I'm a counselor for people who get married and have struggles, or people who are in relationships that have struggle. They call me up and they say, I go, this is what I charge. And they go, great, because we need help. And so when I help them, it's always about communication. What
Hmm.
were you expecting? What were you hoping for? What did you think? How did you feel? Right? And did you lash out? Do you know how to argue? So many people don't know how to argue. They think screaming and hollering or calling names is arguing. And no, that's just hurting the other person. If you don't learn how to argue, it's a completely different ball game that you
Hmm.
can get past, that you can get beyond. And so that's what it is. When you have an oops in your relationship, find out what's most important to both of you. Is it trying to be someone you're not, which is in my case, let's say a dad, or in someone else's case, a mom, uh, to and trying to make a child work into a relationship that wasn't one you wanted to go to anyway. Don't
Right.
do
Yeah. When you have an oops, your tendency in some culture is to immediately get married because like it's still fresh. It's still you're still in that honeymoon phase or
that.
whatnot,
Yeah,
right? And the next logical step is to move forward with that direction. But I don't know. It's just in my world and in my personal life as well. When you have something where you don't have a strong foundation with your partner, you're not just only you're not you need to have both the romantic side and also the friendship side.
yeah.
You know,
And
like
and if you establish that going in, so if you read my book, I say read it 3 or 4 or 5 times, because it's just a foundation. Then read the 5 love languages. If you haven't read the 5 love languages yet, go out and buy that book, or go online and
Mhm.
take the free quiz, the 5 love languages quiz, I think is what it's called. But take that, because it shows how we communicate differently. We have different expectations. And so if you go into any relationship and you understand, hey, we've got a pretty good friendship going here, as well as this wonderful passion we've got going here, then even with an oops, you might be able to say, I think we can work this out because we're headed in the right direction. Friendships don't just happen tomorrow. If I met with Kent and we sit here and do our thing, uh, at the end of this, I don't go, hey, Kent's my best friend, we're gonna hang out forever. No, we said, hey, that was fun. Let's go have a drink together. Let's go play pool together. Let's go play darts together. Let's go play pickleball together. Whatever you're doing, and then you see if that relationship can become a friendship. Otherwise, you might just be friends, right, and not have a real friendship. Somebody who
Mhm.
you can call up in troubles and times and count on them to really help you out. So that's the same thing with a relationship. When
Mhm.
you start, if you know what you're looking for, and you
Mhm.
say, wow, in the first 2 weeks of dating, uh, I think this person has these many qualities that I think will fit into my life, then I hope they have the same uh, situation with you. I hope they think the same thing as you, that you have those same qualities. And
Yeah.
when you talk about it, when you communicate effectively, when you learn how to ask the right questions and you
Mhm.
learn how to listen to their answers, because sometimes people say stuff that they don't really mean. They'll say it, but if you're not listening closely, you might go, okay, we're off. But if you listen real closely, you go and you ask for clarification. What did you mean by that? When you said that, it could be later on in the day. Hey, we had this conversation today at noon, and then at dinner tonight, I go, you said something at noon that I need to clarify. And when they start to clarify, you still get a better impression of what they're doing. Um, but you'll also notice in my book, I tell, especially the women, I tell people, don't have sex for 3 months after you meet. And people go, what? What, Steve? 3 months? I go, women get more attached than men most of the time. Most of the time, not always.
Mhm.
But if you're having sex 2 weeks in, you've got emotional attachments there that you won't even be thinking about the friendship part. I mean, you're like, oh, this is great. I think I'm going to go, You forget about the friendship. If you wait 3 months, you have a pretty darn good idea whether you're going to be your friend or not, whether you're going to do the same things or you're heading in the same direction.
I love that. Now it's all boiled down to what are you looking for, right?
Absolutely.
It's like you close your eyes and let's say you always wanted to buy a Tesla, right? Wherever you go in outside, you're gonna spot Tesla only. You don't
That's
spot
right.
anything
That's right.
outside. If you want to buy BMW, you drive it out there. All you look for, all you see is just BMWs, right?
That's
It's
right.
what you're looking for. Same thing with a relationship. What you're looking for,
Oh yeah.
that's what you're gonna attract.
Yeah.
So first know what you're looking for, and your book went great into great deal about that. And once you know what you're looking for, then it's easier to spot them.
Yeah,
Once
that's
you-
exactly right. But you have to know what you're looking for. Most of us just think we're going to go out and meet somebody, fall in love, and live happily ever after. That's the movies. Sorry,
and
that's the movies.
yeah, and I love that about your book because it provides that clarity. That's the foundational step. Really, most people just skip over and they're like, just gonna go out there and just find physical attraction, this and that, and jump into a relationship, and then not really knowing how to go through that list and figure out,
Well,
can I live
what's funny?
can I
What's
live
funny
without
about
this,
that?
without that,
Yeah, that's
right?
right. Can I live with that?
Can exactly, because you're bringing a different perspective into protecting one person without, instead of falling for something that you overlook, right? So you fall for someone based on one or two attributes, but there's one thing about that person you cannot live without. Rather than jumping in blindly, find out first, then jump in, because what's the point wasting all this effort, time, energy, and then there's one thing or two things that you can't live without.
Yeah, that you go.
Well,
That drive me crazy. I met with somebody. Not obviously not since I've been married the last, but once that when she laughed, you went, oh, right. I mean, it just hurt your ears to hear her laugh, and you went, well, there's no way I could spend a lifetime with somebody who makes me tense up when they laugh because it's such a grating laugh. So something simple as that could just make you nutso, and you aren't going to fix them, right? You can't tell somebody else, hey, your laugh is stupid. They'll hate you forever, right?
oh my god, that's having so much fun. Okay, so Steve, they say there's no success without mistakes. So they're basically two sides of the same coin, right? You've been writing, I don't know, this relationship journey, also professional speaker and coach for over 3 decades. What can you share in terms of mistakes to help our viewers, avoid that for themselves, so they can accelerate their growth?
The biggest mistake you're going to make in business, for sure, any kind of business you're in, is lack of consistency. I read it all the time, and it's like if you're going to uh, do this, do it every week or every day or every month, depending on what it is and how it falls together. What we tend to do is we'll do something. For me, it's exercise. And I mean, this has been going on for 3 or 4 decades itself, which is I work out for 3 months. I'm like, yeah, and I'm just starting to see the results. And then something happens and donuts call my name and I quit exercising for 2 or 3 months.
Don't let's call your name.
Yeah, yeah. And so then I take 3 months off, and then every day is like, I should go exercise. Yeah, I should go exercise. And then I don't. And then 3 months later, you're like, oh my gosh. And then you start over. And it's that lack of consistency that keeps me a
Mhm.
pudgy guy, right? And that's true in everything you do. If
Mhm.
you know that you should read every day. If you know, I tell all of my when I teach people how to be better speakers and better presenters, I tell them you have to also belong to a word of the day, which is how to great vocabulary, and you have to belong to a an uplifting, positive, motivational quote of the day, because we all need something to help us go, oh yeah, oh yeah. How to be always, um, we always love what we do. How to be thankful, and that's what we have to always become. So when it comes to success, consistency.
Mhm.
I'll even use that in a relationship. If I went a month and a half without telling my wife how beautiful she was, or that I loved her, or that she's fantastic, you know what? A month and a half later, she's probably starting to hate me. It's like, right?
See?
Because that's what I do for her, right? And so understand, and we'll go back to that. But if I stop doing what I've been doing for all these years, then she may not even ask, because then you reach in that place in your relationship where it's like, well, why did he stop? Does he quit? Doesn't he love me anymore? And you don't want the answer, so you're not going to ask because you're afraid of that answer. So instead, she harbors these hard feelings, and then down the road, she'll say, you know what finish this off is you stop doing this, and it might be something I didn't even know that I stopped doing. So
Mhm.
because we don't have that communication, so it's real, and it's important to understand that if you want something in a relationship, you have to tell the other person. I've had workshops where the ladies will go, I shouldn't have to tell my husband, we've been married for 20 years, if he doesn't know by now, who? I'm like, no, if you want something, tell us. We're not mind readers. Just say, hey, I would love flowers for my birthday. She said, well, then it won't mean anything. If I tell him I want flowers and he gives me flowers, it won't mean anything. I go, your choice. Instead, you'd rather harbor hard feelings that he didn't buy you flowers. How does that make any sense, right? And
Exactly.
so, yeah, and so if you tell the husband, and that's why I do a jewelry service where I've got like 10 guys like me who say I just need to buy my wife stuff on her birthday and I don't remember. So I sign them up on the thing, and when the birthday comes up, I send them a reminder that says, "Hey, your wife's birthday is in 2 weeks. Do you want to buy her one of these jewelry things?" And they go, "Yeah, just order one for me, Steve." And they get this thing and they give it to their wife, and you know what? The wives are like, "You're so thoughtful, honey. This is great." And the husbands are like, "Hey, Steve, thanks a lot." you know, but that's we have to be reminded when
Right.
people say they forgot my anniversary. They forgot my anniversary. Did you remind them? Did you tell them your anniversary was coming? I shouldn't have to. Yeah, you should. We all have things that come up. It's really all about communication.
Mhm.
Everything we do is about communication. You want to be more successful in business? Learn how to have conversations that elevate the other person so they think more highly of you. We call that know, like, and trust. When they know, like, and trust you, they're going to do business with you. They're going to refer you. They're going to give you opportunities. And that's true in everything we do.
I love it. Consistency in every aspects, whether
Yeah.
it's relationship, whether it's business, when we start on something, just consistently do it and ask and tell the other person what you really want in business or in
Oh,
relationship,
yeah.
whatnot, because no one is a mind reader. And that's the thing about relationships sometimes, right? They're like, oh, he or she should just know that.
Should. That's
And
you
then
get
harp
into
on
that
everything.
category. Yeah, you get
Yeah,
into that should category. Should. Yeah. No.
oh, you should know that, right?
Somebody
Right.
should all over you. That's what we say. It's like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah, but
I should have done that.
right, and that's the problem with a lot of relationships is one person thinks, oh, he or she should, and because it's such a common sense, how can he or she not see it, right?
Well,
But common sense isn't common practice. That's the problem.
no. That's right. That's exactly. I got two stories for you on that in terms of relationship stuff, and one of them is when I was a night manager at a Village Inn, and I would watch this older couple. Well, I was in my 20s. Remember that? I was in my 20s. They were probably in their 50s, and they'd walk in, right, not talk to each other, come and sit down, open their papers, read their papers, finish their breakfast, get up, and walk back out. And I don't think we ever saw them talk to each other. Didn't happen. And I thought for years, what a miserable life they must lead to have each other and all they do is that and they don't talk to each other. In reading the five love languages, what I learned was one of their love languages was probably quality time. All they needed was somebody to be there for them and understand them. And both of them had that same, so they could show up, hardly talk to each other, know that each of them was there, and leave. And they were, you know what? Happy. They were happy. It fit their thing. That's what's really great about this kind of stuff is that you have the stuff that until you understand your partner, by the same token, I was at a dance club a few years ago, and I'm sitting there with a date, and they come up to the dance floor. This couple comes up to the dance floor and stands on the edge, and the girl wants to dance bad. The guy's like watching people dance. And she's dancing around him, wiggling against him, bumping up against him, dancing,
Right.
dancing. And then the music stops and they go back and sit down. And I'm like, again, boy, that's not going to work out well. Well, it would if she understood his love language and he understand her love language. So her love language obviously is physical touch, dancing, movement, that kind of stuff. And his obviously wasn't. As long as they understood that he was never going to become a dancer and she was never going to stop dancing, they'd probably get along fine. But if they didn't understand that about each other, and the
Hmm.
only thing keeping them together was something mutual right now, maybe they were work partners and they worked really well together. But once they stop working together, their relationship is gone. So those kind of things that we need to learn and grow. We need to expand our mind. That's why I put on this confident conversations thing, is because we have to keep experiencing future communication. That's valid, vital to your success.
I love that. I love that. No, thank you for the advice and the wisdom that you just shared through your own personal practical stories, right? That's just tremendous, Steve. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I know people are gonna want them to get a dive into your book because I know your book is so phenomenal in terms of giving people clarity. Because once they have clarity in terms of what they're looking for, how to go about finding that right partner, and then so that they can be successful in their own personal life. Because relationship is a big thing in anybody's life, whether it's at
Oh
work
yeah.
or at home or whatnot, right? Especially your romantic relationship side, because everybody has one way or another have some sort of romance, in their life, right? So if that part is all nice and handle and solid, then every other aspect of your life will fall into place, right? So what kind of services are you offering at the moment, and how do people find you?
Well, best thing to do is reach out to me, Steve at stevesapato.com. That's Steve at Steve
Got
Sapato, spelled Sapato, stevesapato.com. You can call me. I'm open to taking phone calls, 813-906-9197. I'll repeat that if you just picked up your ink pen, 813-906-9197. But reaching out to me, you can find me on the internet, certainly at stevesapato.com. Or if you're
Mhm.
looking to become a presenter, looking for more ways to pick up your game, stevesapatoseminars.com. So stevesapatow.com is for more like the relationship side, uh, romance, and Steve Sapato Seminars is more for the business side. So you get to choose, and I will look forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Steve, for being on the show. This is tremendous. Your presence, your expertise, and your advice in terms of how to be a confident speaker, as well as how to be great in the relationships, right? It's tremendous. I learned so much from you and your book, and I hope and I believe that all the viewers on here will benefit the same way. So thank you. And guys, thanks for showing up for today's live show. If you're watching the replay and have questions, feel free to drop it in the comment, and we'll get back to you if we once we receive it. Thank you for joining, guys. Have a good rest of your weekend, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, Kent.